Have you ever wondered why belly fat seems to be the last to go, even when you're fasting or eating clean? It's almost as if your body is protecting it on purpose, and in a way, it is. Hidden behind this stubborn fat is a powerful hormone called cortisol, a biochemical guardian shaped by thousands of years of evolution. But here's the plot twist. This same hormone that once kept us alive can now make fat loss frustratingly difficult. Cortisol isn't the villain people think it is. In fact, in the right amounts, it keeps you energetic, focused, and capable of dealing with unexpected danger. But when fasting enters the scene, cortisol's behavior changes dramatically. Suddenly, it switches from helpful to protective, and not in the way you want. That's where the real mystery begins. Imagine your body is a fortress, and cortisol is its overprotective commander. When food becomes scarce, like during fasting, cortisol activates defense protocols. It prioritizes survival above aesthetics, meaning saving belly fat becomes top priority. But the question is, when does this shift happen? We'll uncover that soon, but first, we need to understand the early signals your body sends. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how long you can fast before cortisol steps in as the protector of belly fat. And trust me, the truth might surprise you. The moment you begin a fast, your body reacts instantly, faster than most people imagine. In the first 2 to 4 hours, insulin levels begin to fall, and your body starts switching gears from storing to mobilizing energy. It's subtle, almost silent, but this shift lays the foundation for everything that happens next. You don't feel it yet, but biochemically, the countdown has already begun. During these early hours, your blood sugar begins to drop, and your cells start looking for alternative energy sources. Your body still relies on glycogen, sugar stored in your liver, but that supply won't last long. This is where the story becomes interesting. Cortisol hasn't entered the scene yet, but it's watching from the backstage, ready to rise if the pressure increases. Many people mistakenly think fat burning begins immediately, but that's not quite true. In the beginning, your body still prefers easy fuel, glucose. Only when glycogen stores shrink does your metabolism start scanning for other options. And this is where the transition becomes more delicate. What you're about to discover is the precise moment when your body realizes we may not have food coming anytime soon, and what it does next could determine whether you burn belly fat or start protecting it. Every fast has a hormonal choreography, an orchestrated sequence of metabolic shifts. Around the 10 to 12 hour mark, your body makes a decisive change. It begins increasing growth hormone, lowering insulin even more, and gently raising adrenaline to maintain energy levels. These shifts push you closer to the fat-burning zone, but they also alert cortisol that something significant is happening. Cortisol levels usually follow a circadian rhythm, peaking early in the morning. But when your body senses energy scarcity, this rhythm can warp. The longer you go without food, the more cortisol prepares to compensate for falling glucose levels. It's not attacking you. It's trying to keep your brain fueled. The problem is what this does to belly fat. Think of this moment as a turning point. Your body is deciding whether fasting is a harmless short-term event or a potential threat. If the fast stays within the safe window, cortisol remains calm. But if the fast goes too long, the hormonal timeline shifts into survival mode. In a moment, you'll discover where that line is, the exact point where fasting stops being a fat-burning advantage and starts triggering cortisol's protective strategy. But before that, there's a key player you need to meet. Your liver is like a biochemical engine room, working silently to keep everything functioning, especially during fasting. In the first hours, it releases stored glycogen to maintain blood sugar. But once these reserves run low, the liver faces a critical decision: create new glucose or signal the stress response. This is where cortisol begins to sharpen its focus. When your liver senses that glycogen is nearly gone, it initiates gluconeogenesis,
the creation of glucose from non-carbohydrate sources. This process is essential for keeping your brain sharp. But here's the twist. Gluconeogenesis relies heavily on cortisol. The longer you fast, the more cortisol becomes involved in fueling this process. If your liver had endless glycogen, cortisol wouldn't need to rise. But since it doesn't, your body must choose between burning fat or protecting it. And believe it or not, belly fat is one of the most valuable reserves in your evolution. That means your liver and cortisol often team up to keep it intact. This collaboration once ensured humans could survive harsh conditions. Today, it may stop you from losing stubborn belly fat, especially if your fast crosses a particular threshold. And you'll learn exactly when that happens very soon. Here is where things get interesting, and where many people unknowingly sabotage their results. Cortisol starts rising noticeably when your body senses that energy intake is uncertain. This typically happens after 12 to 18 hours of fasting, depending on your stress levels, sleep quality, and metabolic health. But this rise isn't dangerous, at least not yet. The first spike is your body's way of keeping you awake, alert, and functional without food. It's trying to help you, not store fat. However, if the fast continues much longer, cortisol begins shifting its priorities. Its goal becomes preserving essential energy for the brain, which is when belly fat enters the spotlight. What determines whether cortisol becomes your ally or your enemy is not just the duration of fasting, but also the intensity of your lifestyle stress. High stress plus prolonged fasting equals a perfect recipe for cortisol to defend your fat instead of burning it. And many people fall right into this trap without realizing it. Before we continue, tell me something. Do you think stress affects your fasting results? As your fast continues past the 18-hour mark, your metabolism reaches a crossroads. Your body begins increasing ketone production, signaling that it's shifting from glucose to fat as its primary fuel source. This is usually the moment people feel sharper, lighter, or even more energized, a sign that the metabolic switch has officially flipped. But this same moment also awakens cortisol's protective instincts. When ketones rise, your body recognizes that you're entering a deeper metabolic state. This can be extremely beneficial for fat loss, but only if cortisol remains stable. If cortisol rises too rapidly, it sends mixed signals: burn fat for energy, but protect belly fat at all costs. It's a biochemical tug of war that determines whether your fast accelerates fat loss or stalls it. This is why some people burn fat quickly during long fasts, while others see no changes at all. It isn't luck, it's hormones. If your cortisol stays in balance, your body becomes an efficient fat-burning machine. But if cortisol elevates too much, your metabolism becomes conflicted, slowing progress. You'll soon discover the precise timing where this turning point becomes critical, and how long you can safely fast before cortisol switches from supportive to defensive mode. Belly fat has a reputation for being stubborn, and there's a scientific reason for that. Unlike fat stored in other areas, visceral fat, the fat surrounding your organs, is metabolically active. It's the body's emergency reserve, a fuel tank made to sustain your brain and vital organs during long periods without food. That means your body protects it more aggressively.
From an evolutionary perspective, belly fat was a survival advantage. It kept our ancestors alive during winters, droughts, and unpredictable food shortages. So when cortisol rises, the body is programmed to defend this precious energy source first. Not your arm fat, not your leg fat, your belly fat. This is also why belly fat responds more strongly to stress hormones. Cortisol has a special affinity for abdominal fat cells. They have more cortisol receptors than almost any other fat cell in the body. That means the moment cortisol increases, belly fat feels the impact first. Understanding this gives you a major advantage. If you can control cortisol, you can finally unlock the belly fat that feels impossible to lose. And in a moment, you'll learn when cortisol starts tightening its grip and how to prevent it. When your fast continues past 20 hours, your body revisits an ancient biological protocol known as the survival switch. This is the moment your metabolism evaluates whether you're in a temporary food shortage or a life-threatening one. And the hormone that receives this signal first is cortisol. Extended fasting can be incredibly powerful, improving insulin sensitivity, boosting autophagy, and enhancing mental clarity. But it's also the phase where cortisol subtly begins to rise to ensure survival. It does this by preserving essential energy sources, especially those around the abdominal area. This is the moment your modern goals clash with ancient biology. Your ancestors often faced unpredictable food scarcity, so their bodies adapted to store and protect fat around the organs. During long fasts, that survival mechanism is still active today. The question is not whether the survival switch will turn on, but when it will activate and how strongly it impacts your belly fat. In a moment, you'll learn exactly when cortisol becomes dominant. But before that, there's one specific time frame you need to understand: the critical interval where belly fat protection goes from mild to intense. This is the moment you've been waiting for, the time frame where your body shifts from burning belly fat to defending it. Research shows that cortisol begins to rise noticeably after 24 hours of fasting, but the most critical interval falls between 24 and 36 hours. This is where your brain becomes highly protective of its energy supply. During this interval, your liver's glycogen is fully depleted, ketones are rising, and cortisol steps in to maintain blood sugar. But the downside is that cortisol begins slowing down lipolysis, specifically in the abdominal region. In simple terms, your body burns fat everywhere more easily than it burns fat from your belly. Think of this phase as a negotiation between your body's priorities and your goals. If cortisol stays manageable, you continue burning fat smoothly. But if cortisol spikes due to stress, poor sleep, or overexertion, your body becomes defensive and starts locking fat in place. The belly becomes the primary zone of protection. This interval is crucial because it determines whether a long fast becomes a fat-burning success or a frustrating plateau. And to understand why cortisol behaves this way, you need to see how it interacts directly with fat cells, especially abdominal ones.
By the time you reach 30 hours of fasting or more, cortisol has fully assumed its role as the energy preservation officer. One of its main functions is to regulate glucose to keep your brain functioning. But the trade-off is that cortisol begins reinforcing fat storage signals in the abdomen, especially if the body perceives the fast as stressful. Abdominal fat cells have more glucocorticoid receptors, which means they respond more strongly to cortisol than fat cells elsewhere. When cortisol binds to these receptors, it sends a command: hold on to energy. This is why belly fat becomes harder to burn during extended fasts, even when you're in a deep calorie deficit. This doesn't mean long fasts never burn belly fat. They can, but only if cortisol remains relatively stable. If stress levels are low, sleep is good, and your fast is structured, cortisol won't go high enough to block fat loss. The danger comes when life stress and fasting stress combine. Now you know the mechanism behind belly fat lockdown, but the most important question remains: how do you prevent this from happening? That's exactly what we'll explore in the final block. Even if your fasting window is perfect, stress can quietly turn your progress upside down. Cortisol doesn't just rise from long fasts, it also spikes when your mind is overwhelmed. Poor sleep, emotional tension, intense workouts, and even constant notifications can push cortisol higher than your fast alone ever would. And the body doesn't distinguish between fasting stress and life stress. It simply reacts. When these stresses overlap, your fast enters dangerous territory. The combination triggers a biological flare. Your body senses threat, heightens cortisol, and begins preserving the most valuable energy storage it has, your abdominal fat. It's not trying to sabotage you, it's trying to protect you from what it perceives as scarcity and danger at the same time. This is why two people can follow the same fasting protocol but experience completely different results. One loses fat quickly because the internal environment is calm. The other struggles, not because they're doing anything wrong, but because their stress load silently rewires cortisol's behavior. It's a metabolic sabotage that most people never recognize. But here's the empowering truth. Once you know this, you can control it. And in the next sections, you'll discover not only the ideal fasting window, but also how to keep cortisol on your side, instead of letting it turn against your belly fat goals. Science shows that there's a sweet spot for fasting that maximizes fat loss while minimizing cortisol's protective response. Most research points toward a fasting window between 16 and 22 hours as the zone where fat burning is active and cortisol stays relatively stable. Beyond this range, the risk of cortisol-driven fat protection increases sharply. Ending your fast within this window keeps your metabolism in a balanced state. Your ketones are rising, insulin is low, and lipolysis, fat breakdown, is active, all without triggering the survival mechanisms that come with extremely prolonged fasting. It's the perfect metabolic middle ground. This also explains why intermittent fasting protocols like 16-8 or 18-6 often lead to consistent fat loss, especially around the abdomen. They leverage the benefits of fasting without pushing cortisol into a defensive state. It's not just about how long you fast, it's about maintaining hormonal harmony.
But this doesn't mean longer fasts are bad. They can be powerful when done strategically. You just need to avoid crossing the cortisol threshold, and that's exactly what you'll learn next. If you want to prevent cortisol from sabotaging your belly fat loss, you must guide your body into a calm physiological state during your fast. The first strategy is surprisingly simple: sleep. A full night of quality sleep dramatically reduces morning cortisol peaks and sets the tone for stable hormones throughout the day. It's one of the most underestimated tools in fat loss. Another key factor is hydration with electrolytes. Dehydration increases cortisol, even if your fast is going well. Sodium, potassium, and magnesium help your nervous system stay balanced, preventing stress spikes. Think of electrolytes as a shield that keeps cortisol from rising excessively during your fasting window. Light movement also helps. Walking, gentle stretching, or slow-paced exercise reduces stress hormones and supports fat oxidation. The goal is not to push your body harder, it's to prevent the stress response that forces your metabolism into protective mode. When your body feels safe, cortisol remains moderate. You'll soon see how these strategies combine to keep your body burning fat instead of defending it. But before we wrap this up, let's talk about how to supercharge your results by using science-backed techniques that work alongside fasting. If you want to amplify belly fat burning while fasting, timing and technique make all the difference. Cold exposure, for example, can be a powerful ally. Brief, controlled cold showers stimulate brown fat activation, increasing energy expenditure without triggering cortisol. It's a metabolic hack backed by modern studies. Another strategy is consuming foods that naturally modulate cortisol after your fast ends, such as blueberries, green tea, turmeric, and leafy greens. These foods reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, and help prevent the cortisol rebound that often follows long fasts. Feeding your body strategically after a fast is just as important as the fast itself. Breath work also plays a massive role. Slow nasal breathing or box breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the state of rest and digest. This counters cortisol's stress effects and helps maintain consistent fat burning. Even 2 minutes of controlled breathing can shift your hormonal balance significantly. And if you want to understand the next stage your body enters after fat burning, the moment your cells start repairing themselves, then watch my video, How Long Could You Fast Before Triggering Autophagy? Science Explained. It connects perfectly with what you've just learned and will take your fasting knowledge to an even deeper level. And now,
we reach the core question of this entire video. When does cortisol actually start protecting belly fat during fasting? The science points to a clear answer. Cortisol begins rising gradually after 12 to 18 hours of fasting. But the true protective phase, the moment where your body actively defends belly fat, happens between 24 and 36 hours of continuous fasting. This is the metabolic threshold where your brain prioritizes survival over fat loss. Once this window is crossed, cortisol focuses on preserving abdominal fat because it's the most efficient fuel storage for emergencies. This is why extremely long fasts can sometimes backfire if not done under the right conditions or with proper stress management. Understanding this doesn't mean you should avoid long fasts. It means you must approach them with strategy. If your stress is high, sleep is poor, or lifestyle pressure is intense, extended fasting becomes counterproductive. But when done safely, mindfully, and with full awareness of your hormonal state, fasting becomes a powerful tool for sustainable fat loss. If you stayed with me until this final revelation, you now have something most people never learn: the exact timeline when fasting helps you burn belly fat and when it shifts into protective mode. Use this knowledge wisely. If this video opened your eyes about fasting and cortisol, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this content with someone who needs to hear it. And of course, drop a comment telling me your longest fast ever. I'm reading every single one.